A billionaire returns to his mansion, only to witness his wife humiliating the woman who raised him. His adoptive mother, frail and scared, is being treated like a servant in her own home. Every insult, every cruel action. He freezes. Shock turns to heartbreak, and heartbreak turns to rage. What he does next will change everything. If you're new to this channel, make sure to subscribe. The morning sky over Los Angeles was clear and bright when Daniel King stepped out of his private jet. He carried no security team today, no assistant, no noise. For the first time in months, he was returning home without a schedule pulling him in every direction. The emergency summit in New York had been canceled at the last minute, giving him an unexpected break. He had decided instantly that he would go home early and surprise his wife, Vanessa. The idea alone had kept a calm smile on his face throughout the flight back. Daniel adjusted the strap of his leather bag and took a deep breath. The familiar scent of the runway mixed with the soft ocean breeze felt refreshing. He imagined how Vanessa would react when she opened the door and found him standing there. Maybe she would scream in excitement. Maybe she would rush toward him and wrap her arms around him. He had been away for 2 long weeks. She often complained that his business trips took him away from her for too long. Today, he thought, she would finally get what she always asked for. More time, more attention, more of him. A driver approached and offered to take the bag, but Daniel waved him off gently. He wanted the day to feel normal, simple, personal. No billionaire image, no corporate responsibilities. Just a husband returning to his wife. During the drive, he rested his head against the window and watched the city pass by. People were rushing to work. Kids were waiting for school buses. Street vendors were preparing their carts for the day. Life looked peaceful from the back seat of the car. Daniel felt light. His mind went to Mary, his adoptive mother. She had been unwell lately. He wondered if she was resting properly. Vanessa had assured him on the phone that everything at home was under control. She had said that Mary was being taken care of and that he should focus on his meetings. He trusted her without hesitation. She had never given him a reason not to. The car turned into the long private road leading to the King estate. Tall palm trees lined the sides, light swaying with the breeze. The mansion appeared slowly, standing quiet and elegant under the morning sun. Daniel felt a warm excitement rise in his chest. He imagined Vanessa in the living room, reading a book or rehearsing her fashion content. Maybe Mary would be sitting in her favorite corner chair knitting something new. The thought brought a soft smile to his face. He stepped out of the car with a sense of anticipation. Today was supposed to be a good day, a happy day. He walked toward the main door, suitcase rolling behind him on the polished ground. The staff was usually outside around this hour, cleaning or preparing for daily tasks, but the entrance area was oddly empty. He noticed it but brushed it off casually. Daniel reached for the door handle, ready to surprise the woman he loved. He had no idea how drastically his world was about to change. The moment Daniel stepped inside the mansion, the air felt different. He had lived in this house for 7 years, and he knew its rhythm better than anyone else. Usually the mornings were filled with soft sounds, the clinking of breakfast dishes from the kitchen, the quiet footsteps of the cleaning staff, the faint hum of music from Vanessa's workout room. But today, everything felt strangely still. The silence was not normal. It carried a weight, as if something was being covered or hidden. Daniel paused near the entrance, his hand still resting on the doorknob. The temperature inside felt cooler than usual, almost cold. He looked around. The lights were on, but the place felt empty. His suitcase wheels made a soft echo across the marble floor, and even that small sound felt out of place in the heavy quiet. He called out softly, "Vanessa." No response. He tried again, louder this time, but the mansion did not answer back. Even his voice sounded like it did not belong in the silence. He exhaled slowly and walked toward the living room. The large chandelier above seemed brighter than it should be, as if someone had turned it on only moments before he arrived. As he approached the hallway, he finally spotted someone. One of the housemaids, Lila, was standing near the staircase, holding a stack of folded towels. She froze the second she saw him. Her eyes widened slightly, and the towels slipped in her hands a little before she caught them again. Daniel smiled politely. "Good morning, Lila." She nodded quickly and bowed her head. "Good morning, sir." But something was off. She would normally greet him warmly. She would often ask how his trip went. Today she looked nervous, almost frightened. She kept glancing toward the west side of the house, as if she was worried someone might see her talking to him. Daniel walked a little closer. "Everything all right?" Her fingers tightened around the towels and her eyes darted away. "Yes, sir, everything is fine." Her answer came too fast, too rehearsed. Before Daniel could ask another question, she almost rushed down the hallway, disappearing into the laundry room. Her footsteps were almost silent, as if she was trying not to be noticed. Daniel's uneasiness grew. He walked deeper into the house, and with every step, the silence seemed to thicken. Even the clocks on the walls felt louder than usual. Tick, tick, tick. The sound echoed gently across the hall. He passed the dining room, empty, plates still set but untouched. As if breakfast had never been served, as if nobody had been allowed to sit there today. Then he noticed another staff member. The gardener, Malik, was standing near the glass doors that opened to the backyard. He was usually cheerful and energetic, but right now he stood rigid, hands clasped behind him, staring at the floor. Daniel walked up to him. "Malik, everything okay?" Malik nodded too quickly. "Yes, sir. Everything is normal." "Normal." The word sounded forced, unconvincing, almost afraid. Daniel felt a strange pressure building in his chest. This was not the welcome he expected. Something was happening behind closed doors, something the staff knew but could not say. He stepped back, scanning the quiet, tense mansion. The walls felt like they were holding secrets, and for the first time, he wondered if coming home early was not a surprise for Vanessa. It was a surprise for him, something he was never meant to see. He took a slow breath and started walking toward the west hallway. The silence followed him like a shadow. Daniel moved deeper into the west hallway, still trying to make sense of the strange silence that had settled over the mansion. As he turned the corner, he saw another maid walking toward him. It was Rena, a young staff member who had joined only a few months ago. She was usually cheerful and energetic, always smiling, always greeting him with confidence. But today, the moment her eyes landed on Daniel, she stopped mid-step. She did not just pause. She froze. The tray in her hands trembled slightly. A single spoon rattled softly against the plate. Her face turned pale, and her eyes widened as if she had seen something she was not supposed to. Daniel slowed his steps, sensing her fear. "Rena, everything all right?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She shut it again quickly, lowering her gaze to the floor. Her shoulders tensed. She looked like someone who wanted to speak but felt trapped by something, stronger than her own will. Daniel took a few steps closer, concern tightening in his chest. "Did something happen?" Rena shook her head too fast. "No, sir, all good." But her voice cracked on the last word. Daniel noticed how tightly she was gripping the tray, her knuckles turning white. Her breathing had changed too, shallow, quick, like someone scared of making a mistake. She kept glancing toward the far end of the hallway, not casually, not out of habit. It was the look of someone checking if a person was watching. Daniel followed her eyes, but the hallway was empty. Still, Rena behaved like someone standing under a shadow he could not see. He took another small step forward. "Rena, you know you can tell me if something is wrong." Her lips parted again, and for a moment, Daniel felt she would speak. Her eyes flickered upward. She looked right at him, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. She seemed to gather courage, almost whispering something under her breath. Then the sound of a distant door closing made her jump. She stiffened instantly, looked behind her again, and shook her head as if warning herself not to say a single word. "I am sorry, sir. I need to go." Before Daniel could ask anything else, she turned and hurried away, almost running, not like an employee with work to do, but like someone fleeing from being seen with him. Daniel stood alone in the middle of the hallway, his heartbeat picking up. The silence around him felt heavier now. What was happening inside his own home? Why were the people who usually trusted him afraid to speak? And what were they afraid of? This was not normal staff behavior. This was fear, real fear. As Daniel watched Rena disappear around the corner, a cold thought settled in his mind for the first time since he arrived home. Something is wrong. Very wrong. He straightened his posture and continued walking, now fully alert. The mansion no longer felt like a home. It felt like a place hiding a secret that only he was not supposed to know. Daniel walked slowly through the west hallway, each step echoing lightly against the polished floor. The silence of the mansion still hung heavy around him. But now there was something else mixed into the air. Something faint. Something that felt like tension hiding in the corners. His instincts sharpened with every step. As he passed one of the long decorative mirrors, he caught his own reflection. His face looked calm, but his eyes showed a careful alertness. Something in this house was off. The staff had acted too strangely. The atmosphere was too unusual, and deep inside him a feeling was growing. A warning. He moved forward, turning toward the left corridor. That was the direction of the guest room Mary usually stayed in. He planned to check on her first. Maybe she would help him understand why the house felt so uneasy today. Right as he reached the middle of the hallway, he heard something. A voice, sharp, harsh, and angry. It was Vanessa. Daniel stopped instantly. The sound came from the room at the end of the hall, a room Vanessa often used for her personal calls and meetings. His first thought was simple. She must be on the phone. Maybe she did not know he was home yet. But something was wrong. Her tone was not the usual frustration she used with business partners or designers. This tone was personal, bitter, pushing, as if she was scolding someone she had lost patience with. Daniel took a few slow steps toward the door. He listened more carefully. Then he heard something that made his stomach tighten. It was another voice, weak, soft, almost trembling. It was Mary. Daniel felt a sudden chill crawl up his spine. He moved closer to the door, his heartbeat increasing. Mary rarely raised her voice. She rarely argued, and she had been fragile lately. Hearing her voice trembling behind a closed door was enough to send a wave of worry through him. Vanessa spoke again, her voice sharper this time. "Why do you keep doing this? You are making everything difficult. Stop acting like a child." A short pause followed. Then Mary's soft, strained voice responded. "I am trying. I just need a little help, please." The word please cut straight through Daniel. It was not a normal request. It was fear. A quiet fear. He stepped even closer, his hand gently touching the doorframe. He wanted to open the door instantly, but something stopped him. A part of him needed to understand what was happening without alerting anyone. His ears stayed focused. Vanessa's voice rose again. "You always ruin things. You make a mess. How many times do I have to tell you to stay out of the way?" This time Mary did not answer. Daniel could hear nothing but her shaky breathing. Every instinct inside him screamed that something was very wrong. Vanessa had never spoken to Mary like this. Not in front of him. Not even once, and the staff's fear now made sense. They knew. They had seen something he had not. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, controlling the anger rising inside him. He took a deep breath and then placed his hand on the doorknob. The decision was made. He was no longer listening from outside. He turned the handle slowly and prepared himself for whatever was waiting on the other side. The truth was just behind that door. Daniel pushed the door open just enough to see inside. The first thing he noticed was the sound. Water hitting the floor, a bucket shifting, a weak gasp. He leaned forward slightly, trying to understand what was happening. Then his eyes locked on the scene. Mary was standing near the small table by the window. Her hands were trembling. Her clothes were soaked, clinging to her thin frame. Cold water dripped from her shoulders to the polished wooden floor. Her breathing was uneven and her face looked frightened, confused, and helpless. Right in front of her stood Vanessa. Her posture was firm, her chin lifted, her eyes sharp with irritation. She held an empty metal jug in her hand, the same one Mary often used to water her plants. The floor around them was wet, and the look on Vanessa's face held something Daniel had never seen there before. Not annoyance, not frustration, something darker, something cold, something cruel. Vanessa spoke sharply. "Look at this. You ruined the whole thing again. How hard is it to do one simple task?" Mary tried to speak, but her voice broke. "I am sorry, I tried." My hands were shaking. I could not hold it properly. Her apology only made Vanessa roll her eyes. "You always have excuses. You are nothing but trouble. I am tired of cleaning up after you." She shoved Mary lightly with her arm. It was not a hard push, but enough to make the older woman lose her balance for a moment. Mary grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself. Daniel felt something inside him tighten painfully. He had seen enough, but before he could enter, Vanessa continued. "Daniel treats you like some saint, but all you do is get in the way. If you stayed in your room like I told you, none of this would have happened." Mary looked down, her hands still shaking. "I only wanted to help." Her words were soft, barely audible. Vanessa stepped closer to her, lowering her voice but keeping it sharp. "Help! You call this help? You cannot even hold a jug without causing a mess. You should be grateful we let you stay here at all." Daniel felt anger rise from deep inside him. His heartbeat became louder, stronger. The woman he loved, the wife he trusted, the person he defended countless times. She was standing in front of his adoptive mother, humiliating her, hurting her, treating her like she was unwanted. Mary flinched as Vanessa lifted the jug again, as if ready to throw whatever little water remained. That was the moment Daniel lost the last bit of patience inside him. He pushed the door open fully and stepped inside, the door hitting the wall behind it. Vanessa turned sharply, surprise taking over her expression for a second. The jug slipped slightly in her hand. She froze. Daniel. He did not say a word. He only looked at Mary, soaked and shivering, then back at Vanessa with disbelief written across his face. The truth was no longer hidden. He had seen everything. Daniel stood frozen in the doorway. His body refused to move. The scene in front of him felt unreal, like something that belonged in a nightmare, not his own house. Mary, the woman who had raised him, cared for him and loved him unconditionally, was being humiliated by the person he trusted most. His chest tightened. His heart pounded painfully. He felt anger and sorrow collide inside him. For a moment, he could not breathe. He remembered the first time Mary had taken him in. 30 years ago, a small, lost boy wandering the streets had found a home in her arms. She had been gentle and firm, teaching him right from wrong, guiding him through life with love that felt endless. And now someone was treating her as if she were nothing, as if her decades of care and sacrifice meant nothing. The injustice of it pierced Daniel deeper than any business betrayal ever could. He wanted to shout, to confront Vanessa immediately, but the pain in Mary's eyes stopped him. Her fragile body shook as she tried to hold herself steady. Daniel felt tears sting his eyes. He could see the fatigue, the fear, and the betrayal etched across her face. The woman who had given him everything deserved respect, not cruelty. He had never felt such rage mixed with sorrow in his life. Without thinking, Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his phone and opened the camera. His hands were shaking, but his movements were precise. He needed a record of this moment. Not out of revenge, but to make sure the truth could not be denied. Vanessa's cruelty had to be seen by someone who could act if things escalated. If no one else in the house had the courage to speak, Daniel would make sure this moment was documented. He positioned the camera discreetly. The lens captured Mary's trembling form and Vanessa's aggressive gestures. He held the phone steady, focusing not on anger but on truth. Every insult, every shove, every cruel word was being recorded. Daniel's jaw tightened. His tears threatened to fall, but he did not wipe them. He wanted Mary to know he saw everything. He wanted her to understand that she was not alone, that he would protect her. Daniel felt a burning heat rise in his chest. He wanted to confront Vanessa verbally, to make her feel the weight of her actions. But he remained still, letting the camera do its work. He watched Mary, feeling both heartbreak and determination. She had been his mother, his guide, his protector, and now he would be hers. In that moment, Daniel realized something. His love for Mary was stronger than anything else. Nothing could shake his loyalty to her. No betrayal, no arrogance, no cruelty could ever change the bond they shared. He would act, but he would do it on his terms, carefully, purposefully. The camera in his hand was not just a device. It was a witness, a promise, a shield. He lowered his head for a brief second, took a deep breath, and steadied himself. The rage inside him was controlled, but it burned brighter than ever. Today, he would not allow injustice to go unchecked. Today, he would stand for Mary. Daniel pushed the door open with a firm hand. The sound of it hitting the wall seemed louder than it should have been. Vanessa turned sharply, her face registering surprise, then instant panic. She had not expected him to return so early. Her eyes darted toward Mary, and she quickly tried to cover her fear with a mask of innocence. She turned her head slightly, as if signaling that she had been doing nothing wrong. Her lips curled into a fake smile. Her hands fidgeted nervously, dropping the jug she had been holding. Mary flinched at the noise. She looked up at Daniel, her eyes wide with confusion and hope. She seemed relieved yet uncertain, as if she was unsure whether his presence would bring comfort or confrontation. Daniel's gaze softened as he met hers for a brief moment. He felt her frailty, her exhaustion, and the silent plea that only a son could understand. Vanessa's eyes met Daniel's, and she quickly shifted her expression. She tried to appear calm, composed, almost innocent. She raised her hand slightly, a small gesture of fake surrender. Her lips moved as if she wanted to say something, but no words came out. She looked like a cat caught in the act, aware that the moment she opened her mouth, she could be exposed. The arrogance that had defined her moments ago had vanished, replaced by thinly veiled fear. Daniel stepped inside slowly, each movement deliberate. His eyes never left her face. He controlled his breathing, keeping his voice steady. He wanted Vanessa to understand the weight of the moment without the need for shouting. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm but heavy with authority. "Bass, I saw everything." The words hung in the air, short, simple, precise. Daniel did not need to raise his voice. He did not need to gesticulate. The power in his statement was enough to freeze Vanessa in place. Her skin paled and her eyes widened. She swallowed hard, suddenly realizing that her manipulations and cruelty had been witnessed. Every shove, every insult, every drop of water she had thrown at Mary was now known. She could no longer hide behind excuses or lies. Her face lost all its color. The smile she had tried to force fell away, replaced by tension and alarm. She looked at Mary, hoping for some support or excuse from the older woman, but Mary remained silent, frail, quiet, and hesitant. She looked toward Daniel, her eyes filled with trust and relief. Vanessa's plan, her illusion of control, had crumbled in an instant. She realized that her actions could no longer be hidden. She realized that she had misjudged Daniel's return and his patience. Daniel's heart pounded quietly, not from fear, but from the fire of protective rage. He would not let this go unnoticed. He would not allow Mary to suffer under someone else's cruelty. His gaze stayed locked on Vanessa, unyielding, firm, and unmovable. She understood now that there was no escape, no excuse, no turning back. The confrontation had begun, and Daniel held the power in his calm, deliberate presence. Daniel's eyes were locked on Vanessa. She stood frozen, pale and exposed, her hands hanging awkwardly at her sides. Every insult, every shove, every cruel action had been seen. His chest tightened as he turned slowly toward Mary. The older woman looked, exhausted, soaked, and fragile, yet she met his gaze with quiet courage. Daniel took a deep breath, forcing his anger to remain controlled. He needed answers, clarity before acting. Mary's lips trembled. Daniel asked gently, "How long has this been happening?" Mary looked down, her hands fidgeting with her sleeve. She did not respond immediately. Daniel waited. The silence stretched heavy and uncomfortable. Every second heightened the tension in the room. The staff shifted nervously behind him, avoiding eye contact. They knew something. They had seen more than Daniel could imagine. His gaze moved to each of them, seeking honesty. Finally, one of the staff, a young man named Malik, cleared his throat and spoke in a low voice. "Sir, months." Daniel's eyes narrowed. His jaw tightened. Months, not days. Not a single incident. Months of cruelty had been inflicted on the woman who had raised him. His chest burned with cold fury. The calm he had maintained until now dissolved into a dangerous, silent anger. His mind raced through all the moments Mary had served this household with dignity, all the times she had cared for him and never complained. And all the while, Vanessa had treated her with contempt. Daniel stepped closer to Vanessa. His presence was quiet but commanding. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Every movement, every look carried weight. Vanessa's composure began to crumble. Her face lost the last traces of color. She attempted to speak, to defend herself, but the words caught in her throat. There was no excuse left, no justification. She had been fully exposed. Mary took a small step forward, holding her hand to steady herself. She looked at Daniel with trust, relief, and a hint of fear. She had endured months of humiliation silently, hoping that somehow things would get better. Now she felt that the truth had arrived. Daniel's presence was a shield. His anger was a promise that she would no longer be hurt. Daniel turned slowly, his gaze sweeping across the room, locking with each staff member. His eyes were sharp, controlled, and firm. This was not a moment for yelling or chaos. This was a moment of revelation. Everyone knew it. Vanessa realized that her arrogance had no power here. Daniel had seen everything. He understood everything, and he would act. Vanessa's hands twitched. She swallowed hard, trying to regain some semblance of authority. But Daniel's stare never left her. His calm fury was like ice and fire at the same time. He did not need to speak further to prove that she was defeated. The room was silent, except for the faint sound of Mary's breathing and the nervous shifting of the staff. The truth had been laid bare. Vanessa's position of control was gone. She was exposed utterly and completely. Daniel took a steady breath and stepped back slightly, letting the weight of the moment sink in. The balance of power had shifted, and he would make sure that no one ever would be able to hurt Mary again. Daniel stood in the center of the room, his posture firm, his gaze unwavering. Vanessa was still in shock, her face pale, lips trembling as if she could not believe what was happening. For months she had held control in this house, in this life, manipulating and dominating those she considered weaker. Now every bit of that power had evaporated. Daniel's eyes fixed on her, calm, cold, full of quiet authority. He spoke slowly, deliberately. "This house, this life was not yours to disrespect. Pack your bags." The words hit Vanessa like a physical blow. She froze, then began to speak, her voice cracking. She tried to twist the situation, to place blame elsewhere, to make herself look like the victim. She looked at Daniel with pleading eyes, attempting every trick she had used before. She moved closer, reaching out slightly as if to touch him, to remind him of the life they had shared. Daniel did not flinch. His face showed no hesitation, no doubt. He had seen the truth. He had watched her cruel actions toward Mary. He had heard every insult, witnessed every shove, and recorded every moment. The trust he had once placed in her was gone. Completely her. Manipulations could no longer sway him. His heart ached for the betrayal. But the ache was steady and resolute, not chaotic. Vanessa's voice grew louder as she tried to argue. She cried. She begged. She whispered promises she knew he would not believe. She attempted to soften him with false remorse, trying to ignite even a flicker of doubt in his mind. But Daniel's heart had already closed that door. The shock, the heartbreak, and the rage had merged into a single determination. She would leave, today. He motioned slightly toward the security team that had been quietly stationed nearby. They stepped forward immediately, their movements precise and professional. Vanessa's attempts to manipulate the moment now had no effect. She was no longer in control. The guards guided her gently but firmly toward the exit. She tried one last time to speak, to argue, to cry for mercy. Daniel remained unmoved. Mary watched quietly, her frail hands clutching the edge of the table. Relief and exhaustion mingled in her eyes. Daniel turned to her briefly, offering a small nod of reassurance. Everything would be okay now. No one would hurt her again. Vanessa paused at the door, her eyes meeting Daniel's. For a moment, she looked like she was trying to read his mind, to find any hesitation. She found none. The anger in his gaze was cold, distant, and final. She realized fully that her reign of control was over. The life she had tried to dominate was not hers to dictate. The security team gently guided her out. Her sobs echoed faintly through the hallway, but Daniel did not look back. He remained standing tall, his chest heavy with a mix of heartbreak and relief. The house was finally safe. Mary was safe. And the lesson had been delivered without a single word of violence. Authority, clarity, and justice had triumphed. Daniel exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. The final decision had been made. The betrayal had ended. The home would once again be a place of respect, care, and safety. He stepped back into the living room, turning to Mary, ready to ensure that nothing like this would ever happen again. Daniel knelt beside Mary, his hands gentle as he helped her stand. She was frail, still shivering from the cold water, and the fear that had gripped her moments before. Daniel wrapped a soft blanket around her shoulders, tucking it carefully so she would feel warmth and safety. His movements were slow, deliberate, filled with care. Every action showed his love and gratitude for the woman who had given him a life full of guidance, protection, and unconditional support. Mary's eyes filled with tears. She looked up at Daniel, her lips trembling as she tried to speak, but no words came. Her frailty had always been visible, but now her vulnerability carried the weight of months of humiliation. Daniel felt a surge of emotion. He had seen too much pain inflicted on her. He could not allow it to continue. Not in his home. Not under his watch. Carefully, he guided her toward the wheelchair he had brought. Each step was steady, each movement full of reassurance. Mary clutched his arm lightly, her trust evident in the way she leaned on him. Daniel adjusted her position in the chair, making sure she was comfortable and secure. He knelt again for a moment, looking directly into her eyes. "Mom, from today, no one will ever hurt you again." His voice was soft but firm. There was no hesitation. There was no doubt. Mary's tears fell freely now. Relief mixed with lingering fear created a cascade of emotion she could no longer contain. Daniel held her hand in his, squeezing gently. His presence, his words, his actions were a promise that she would never be alone in facing cruelty again. He stood and walked slowly behind the wheelchair, pushing her toward the living room. The house was quiet now. The tension had dissolved, replaced by a fragile peace. Daniel glanced around, noticing how the staff now moved without fear. They had witnessed the justice and understood the boundary that had been set. Daniel stopped in the middle of the living room, placing the wheelchair where sunlight streamed through the windows. He bent down and hugged Mary gently, holding her close. She rested her head against his chest, feeling warmth, safety, and love. The camera angle shifted, capturing the moment from a distance, the emotional weight of the day settling over the scene. The music rose softly, tender and moving. Daniel held Mary a little longer, silently promising to protect her, to cherish her, and to make their home a place of respect, care, and unwavering love. The past cruelty had ended. The future was theirs to build together.